Hi, you are listening to Baachu Talk, a podcast for government services professionals. My name is Baachu, and I will be sitting down with our government services leaders to share their stories, discuss their career, and learn all about the values and collective impact in our society. Today's guest is Claire Dow. As VCSC representative, Claire acts as an intermediary between government and the voluntary sector to champion the Social Value Act and an improvement in commissioning practices. Claire was appointed as Voluntary Community Social Enterprise VCSC Crown Rep in February 2018. As a key player in the social enterprise movement for over 30 plus years, Claire brings a wealth of experience to the role. Claire has led the award-winning Blackburn House since its inception for 35 plus years. From December 2007 to January 2017, Claire was chair of Social Enterprise UK, SC UK. She's also a member of Alday Hospital Trust, and until recently was a board member for the Charity Commission. She has chaired the Liverpool Fairness Commission on behalf of Liverpool City Council and is currently serving on the Liverpool Mayoral Development Board and is the chair of the Society Advisory Board for the British Council. On her appointment, Claire said, "It's an honor to take on this role. Millions of people will benefit from the work that charities and social enterprises do, and I cannot wait to get started to ensure this sector continues to go from strength to strength." Claire, welcome to Baachu Talk. Great to have you with us.
Thank you.
Claire, let's go to the very beginning, Claire. Where were you born? And let's talk about your high school and education.
Okay, I was born in Liverpool. My father was Ghanaian and my mother was from Dublin in Ireland. And so was brought up here, went to school in Liverpool. I went to a very local school. It was in the days of the 11 plus, and unfortunately I did not pass the 11 plus. I was the first in the family. I was middle child, so fifth. So I didn't pass the 11 plus. So I went to, in those days, what was called a secondary modern school, and worked my way through there. So they were my beginnings, which were very much steeped in a very tight family situation, with my father especially being very aspirational for all his children.
Right, that's amazing. Looks like father was a very big influence on you, Claire.
Yeah, my father was the major influence on me. My father studied medicine in Ghana and come over here. Obviously, in that time, discrimination was very, very bad. Late 40s, in the 50s. But my father worked through that to make sure that he planted in all our psyches that we were, the positiveness of what we could be, who we could be, and there should never be any barriers to our, to our life, that we would get through and get to the career choices that we wanted, although he wanted us all to be doctors.
Wow, that's such a privilege, blessing that you had to have such an inspiring father at home. So,
yeah.
Your school, Claire, where did you start to work? What was your first job?
Okay, so unfortunately for the family, my father died when I was 12, which then became a very difficult. My mother, there was 9 of us, and so for my mum, that was very, very difficult. My father died in 1964. And so it left my mum trying to ensure that she could do the best she could for us. My older siblings went off to university. My mum felt that my brother just above me, Frank, that he he should go to university because he would have a family to look after. And my mother was not the same. My father really believed in the equality of both the girls and the boys in the family, so he had the same aspirations for all of us. But unfortunately, my mum felt that I would get married and somebody would look after me. That wasn't to be, because I I didn't get married, excuse me, till later on in life.
Right. I think, yes, that's, yeah.
So what I had done at school was some secretarial skills. And so I then, my mum thought that would be a great job for me. So I went off and tried to get a job because she needed the income for the family. And then things turned very dark for me because I couldn't get a job, and it was because of my skin color. I went to an agency who, although they had jobs in the window, said they had nothing, and what they meant, they had nothing for me. I went to interviews, and one interview where the gentleman interviewing said to me, "I'd work with you, but the others in the back wouldn't." So as a black woman, I then, had to, it was like that sliding door moment when you say, well, what should I do? I can go home and just pull the duvet over my head and forget about it, or I can go out and fight against this inequality. And so I decided to fight for the inequalities. And I met with two other people, and we set up an employment agency that was funded by the Martin Luther King Foundation. And this agency said to employers, our candidates may be black, white, disabled, but what you can be assured that no matter what, we will send you the best person for the job. And it was called International Personnel, and we launched in 1972. So for me then, that was really a pivotal moment in my life, where I then started fighting for racial justice.
Wow. And how old were you, Claire, when you decided to take this equality drive?
I was 19 when I started the agency.
That's super powerful. And this was in 1970s, was it?
Yes, 1971, 72. We started the agency.
And that's inspirational, Claire. And once you started the agency, Martin Luther King, that's what, he's everywhere.
Well, it was a foundation. Yeah, it was the foundation that funded organizations like ours around the world that were interested in racial justice.
Today, Claire, we know that we can find Martin Luther King Foundation in the internet, and we can apply. In 1970s, how did you came to know about the foundation, and how was the application? And it's fascinating for me. How...
Yeah, well, as I say, there was three of us. My good friend Albert Fontenay and another lady called Sue. We worked together, but we matched the money with money from the John Moores Foundation. And John Moores were a very big, very powerful organization. They had the Little Woods Empire at the time. And John Moores really believed in equality. And he, for most of his life, he had the foundation that he put money into organizations that were dealing in this field. He was passionate about it. And so he put money in and matched what we got from the Martin Luther King Foundation. There was one other agency that was opened, and that was in Balham in London. So there became two employment agencies that worked in this way.
Wow. And share us the journey of Blackburn House, Claire, from where you started.
So after this, I went, I left the agency. I'd done the last piece of work that I was working on was that we found that although we had the employment agency, we had a lot of black people that were not getting to the educational standards that they should. So we wrote a proposal to set up an adult education centre. It was an adult education advisory, and it turned into a college, which was then called the Charles Wooten College. But I left to go to the States, and I went to, I always felt I wanted to go to university. I felt that there was something missing. And so I went to the States, and I was doing some research work, and I'd met my partner, and I went to the University of Houston, and I worked part-time on different initiatives in the States. I was in and out of the country for quite some time, and then I came back when my mum was seriously ill, and I had my daughter by then, came back home to look after my mother who had cancer. And the Charles Wooten, it was just after the 81 riots. And so the Charles Wooten Centre, which we'd done the initial scoping for, was really struggling. And so they asked me would I come in and try and support it. It lost some of its grants, so there was lots of unrest in the city at that time. So I went in and tried to stabilise the organisation, get funding back in, get programmes up and running, educational programmes up and running. The international personnel had now called itself South Liverpool personnel, personalised. And so working with them to try and get people into jobs. And there were major initiatives at the time with Michael Heseltine coming to Liverpool, and money that was then invested in Liverpool to bring it back out because it had failed on every economic and social indicator. It was really, the city was in a very bad place. So I did this work, and at the same time, I'd always been trying to fight for women's equality. As a very young woman, I was part of the women's liberation movement. One of my heroes was Angela Davis from the US, who was a very powerful symbol of what a Black woman could achieve and how she could articulate some of the issues that affected our communities. And so then there was a group of women that we decided we wanted to set up. Well, before that, I helped set up the Black Women's Liberation Group in Charles Wooten. After the riots, a lot of women were facing some monumental challenges. So I set up this women's group to give support to women. And then after that, I worked on an initiative to set up a training program dedicated to women in what was then called new technology. And we'd got money from the European Union because they had money for women in non-traditional industries. We thought technology would be a good way, a good industry. We didn't know then what we know now, because it was groundbreaking what we were trying to do. And so I helped set up this organization called Women's Technology Scheme, and we had 30 students and 7 staff, and then history began, and we opened our doors to students in 1984 with our first cohort. I left Charles Wooten then because it was in good hands. I'd stabilised. We had a new director in looking after it. But my heart really lay in trying to drive forward this women's initiative. And then, so that was it. But quite quickly, we were having more women applying to come on our program than there were places. And so we increased it. And when I got to the point where, I had 200 women for 30 places, we had to do something. And also that when women got when they got that first certificate, sometimes for the first time in the traditional education sector had failed them. For the first time, they were getting an educational qualification. They wanted more. And so we then put on high level courses, and many of our women went on to university. But then we outgrew the premises we were in. And that's when Blackburn House story, the next sort of epoch in our journey, started, when we wanted a new building. And that's where Blackburn House was born.
Now, while you were doing this, you were still in your late 20s, right? 20s, and
I was now approaching my 30s when I looked at when I worked with some colleagues on women's technology, and then so what happened was there was Liverpool. If you've not been to Liverpool, Liverpool was UK's second city at one point. We had the Bank of England here. We had the most listed buildings outside of London because it was built on the slave trade. And so you have the amazing buildings all over, listed buildings, grade 1s, grade 2s. And there was a school called Blackburn House, and it had been a girls' school. And this school was started by an entrepreneur called Holt. And Holt, George Holt, believed in the rights of women to education. He had daughters, especially his youngest daughter. And so the building originally was the Lord Mayor's building, Blackburn, and he was a slaver. And then Holt took it over, and George Holt turned it into the first girls' school in the country in 1844. And if you go into Blackburn House, if you go on a tour, you go in and you see these amazing listings on the walls of the girls that had gone there and what happened to them. So you haven't got one from 1844, but the earliest one name there is 1895. And if you can imagine at the time, is that some of these women were able to go to the best universities in the country, Oxford, Cambridge. But at that time, as a woman, you were not allowed to obtain a degree. You could just follow the course of study. And then you see the breakthrough. So you've got some eminent women on those boards that have gone and now have done amazing things around the world. And then so we refurbished it, and that was again where my headache began to sort of say I had to raise. In the first instance, it was 1.7 million, but it went up to 4 million because it was an old building that needed a sensitive restoration because of the beauty of the building, and but had been left empty. The school closed down in '86, and it was like one day the bell went and everyone down tools and went, and you had this amazing building that was just left in dereliction for many years. And you saw that with the riots. You saw how things, the city had declined on every indicator that it possibly could. And that's why there was such unhealthy relations with communities on Merseyside. So I took on the challenge to raise this money. I applied to the City Council that if I could have the building. And I had a good friend, George Osborne, and he said, Claire, put 2 A4 sides together and I'll put it before a committee. If only things were that simple. I did that. But then I found out that there were many other organisations interested in Blackburn House. It is a stunning building on Hope Street in Liverpool between the two cathedrals. And I was able to, I got on again to my old friend, John Moores Jr. And I said, John, I'm going after this building. And if I get it, would you fund some of it for me? And he said, Claire, yes, what building is it? And I said, it's Blackburn House. And he said, oh, I've got an issue. He said, the local polytechnic, through incorporation, was getting university status, was going to be called John Moores University after his father, and they had put in also to get Blackburn House. So they were one of my main competitors. So I said to John, well, either way, John, if I get the building, will you fund me? And if I don't get the building, if I get somewhere else, will you fund me? And he said, yes, of course, up on prime. And in the end, we did get the building because our vision for it, the city felt was more inspirational than the Polytech or then to be John Moores Jr. And so the paper I wrote still stands true today. We wanted a building that would be safe and secure for women, that would be a beautiful building, because so many women live on rundown housing estates, etc. I wanted them to have everything that was first class, that we did the very, very best we could for them. We then setting it in frame was raising. In the end, I had to raise £4 million for this building, which I got, because people were taken by the vision. And so it was for education and training. However, what I didn't want was a building that would suck resource away from education. So we set the rest of the building up as businesses. So we had a bistro, a health place, a nursery. We had conference and events. We had a library. We had a lot of businesses that would support the women. And if those businesses made a profit, go back into the coffers of the education. And there began my journey on social enterprise. And someone said to me, gosh, they're just like social enterprises. And that's when I started to work locally and nationally on the social enterprise agenda. And it was businesses that trade for purpose and planet, and that they are able to support communities or needs of communities. So that was the journey. And we opened up in 94. And we then swelled our numbers up to 1,000 places, educational places for women, had a 30-place nursery. We soon after, a couple of years later, we opened the School for Social Entrepreneurs. And so we had quite a few hundred cohorts going through our programs on entrepreneurship. And it's been one of the most successful women's organizations in the country, but we've worked internationally. We worked with the European Commission. I supported on helping on legislation and support for women's training across Europe, and being around the world in a sense. I've had a glorious career, which came to an end this summer. I retired on July the 31st. And my swan song is that I got the organisation another small building, where they will be opening a digital and entrepreneurship centre, which has unfortunately had to go on hold because of COVID, but hopefully later this year that will open up. So that was a quick journey, but the most important thing is the women that we served in there, is that thousands of women have been empowered through the organisation. And, one of my first memories was one of my women. She was my cleaner. She was cleaning my office. And I asked her to come on a course, and she didn't want to because it wasn't for her. And in the end, she did. And she really enjoyed it. And then she went on to a high-level course, then a level course, went to university, and she's now a deputy head in a school. And I've got another woman who came from Rwanda, and her family had been killed in the genocide. And she didn't speak English. She had French, which a lot of people in Rwanda do have. And it was her sons who said, "Mummy, you've got to go back and get English. You've got to." And she did. She came back, and now she's a senior lecturer in John Moores University as it holds out. But it's been amazing career being there, and but my over the years with my board had to be at policy tables, and I had to affect change in different ways. And so that's where you see the thread of me going into the social enterprise movement, becoming the chair of Social Enterprise UK, and then working government at that time.
Wow, Claire, that 12-year-old girl who was lost after father's demise to all the way to empower women in the country. What was the driving force behind that push, Claire? Because even though, what you already said was, raising £4 million in the 1980s and 1990s is not an easy thing. Even now, it's not an easy thing, let alone take and, set up a team. Even to build a team of 3 people struggle. But you kind of pulled together a college, staff, funding. What was the driving force behind the whole push?
I mean, the driving force for me, I look at Blackburn House now, and as I said, we started with 30 students and 7 staff. We have over 1,000 students on our programs and another 400, 500 in our entrepreneurship programs. We have over 80 staff there now. But for me, it was my father put a drive in me to say I could achieve. And when people said I couldn't, that made me more obstinate to say I could and I was going to. And so, as I said, it was a sliding door moment. You either slide to one way where you feel that it's too, the oppression's too much, you don't want to do it, or you start to say, no, this is not right. And so I always say now, I marched in the 60s and the 70s, and then in the 80s, 90s, and now in the millennium, I wanted to sit around the tables that made policy, because once you can get around those tables, you can affect change. Sometimes, it's great, I still believe, now, if there was something that I felt strongly enough, like Black Lives Matter, I would demonstrate, I'd walk. But now I felt that I was able to unlock opportunities for women, for Black people in a different way, working for, racial justice also, and economic justice. So you'll see on my CV, I don't know if it's in there, that, I've been on quite a few commissions, economic commissions, etc., looking at how we support those further from the, from power, those people that are disempowered, and at the moment, there's so many things that we have to do for families and poverty, there's food poverty and all of those. So, unfortunately, I came to the end of my career at Blackburn House. My career isn't over because I just work for government now, doing that work. But as the job, I think if those things put you out of the job, you've won. But they didn't. They've changed, and they've changed for the better in many cases. And I think for Blackburn House, we've won lots of different awards and freedom of the city, all those things, acknowledging the impact that organisation has had in the Liverpool City region. And it's well respected, but there's still lots to do, unfortunately. And I now have taken my career in a different direction to empower organisations in another way, and that's through government contracts and what we're able to do there to support organisations.
Yes, I think that's a beautiful journey there. Clive, was there any point in your career with Blackburn House where you thought, what, I can't do this anymore. I know I'm giving up, but something pushed you. Was there any incident that comes to your mind?
Yeah. I think for me is that, you do go as a leader, you do go through peaks and troughs, and sometimes it's hard, and contracts change and how people contract with you and funding. And especially when you do get big, because you have a major salary that you want to, the livelihoods of many are on your shoulders. But the thing that inspired me was every year we do a graduation. And at that graduation, I see women from all walks of life come, and for the first time, the joy on their face to receive that certificate. The families are in the audience who, again, are just so proud of the family. And for me, greeting that woman as she comes across that stage and telling her well done and giving her a hug, because I know some of the barriers those face just to get that certificate. You know, they've had, you know, all women don't just come, you know, on a September morning, Monday morning, go ready. They bring with them the issues of, you know, the children, the families. Some get cancer on the way. We've lost women on the way. And, you know, women are carers, you know, so many obstacles. And for them, it's magical. And one of my oldest students, Molly Sale, her son is Alexi Sale, the comedian. And I got her on, Molly was in the 70s, 80s, and she used to just come in to do some gentle Tai Chi in the health place. She'd go and have lunch with her friends, and then she'd go to the library, and her transport bus, you know, would pick her up. And she said, for me, Blackburn House, from the nursery children, the babies, right through, there was something for women in there. And she said, you know, I didn't want to sit in a high back chair with my memories. I wanted to be part of something. And sadly, Molly's no longer with us. But for her, that was that lifeline. So I told my staff, even though I've retired, I might be in at some point, like Molly, and they better make sure it's still there for me to go to.
That's brilliant, Claire. That's brilliant. And from Blackburn House, Claire, you took a lot of positions, like non-exec position, voluntary positions, and advisory positions. Let's maybe spend a couple of minutes each. Was from Blackburn House you moved straight to become chair of Social Enterprise UK, Claire, or was there?
Yeah, well, I didn't move. I was still part of Blackburn House when I became chair. Yeah. The thing for social enterprises in the early days when we were going is that we knew we needed an infrastructure group that would represent us nationally. Right. And so there was quite a few of us who worked. And I sat on a body with, at that time, the Department of Trade and Industry, with Patricia Hewitt, who was the Minister, Secretary of State for Trade and Industry at the time. I mean, she'd visited Blackburn House and she'd seen the power of our social enterprises, that they were, you know, giving money, the money that they made supported education. And so we sat down with her, a number of us, about 15 of us, and we did the first ever social enterprise strategy for the country. And so there was Baroness Glenys Thornton, Jonathan Bland and others, Liam Black, and that's when the Social Enterprise Coalition was set up. And it was infrastructure bodies around the country that looked after social enterprises, social entrepreneurs that came with this body, because we needed to work with government to drive social enterprise throughout the country. I sat on it, and Baroness Thornton was the first chair, and then I then was asked to become the next chair, and so I then drove it onto the next stage. We became Social Enterprise UK, and this infrastructure body has supported social enterprises within government. You know, we've clearly now demonstrated the power of social enterprise, and now community enterprise, because you've seen a lot of community small business setting up on what were once desolate high streets. You've now got community enterprises coming up. And so when you think now we've got about 100,000 social enterprises in the UK from those small beginnings, and I don't have the figure in front of me, but putting billions into the economy. So they are major, major players in the economics of this country. And they are faster growing than SMEs. And you have some very, very large social enterprises. So, for example, you've got Hackney Community Transport, HCT. They've got bus routes, community bus routes all around the country and in the Channel Islands. And they won the contract from the private sector and the private sector entry to run the Olympic bus route when the Olympics were in London, and they won it. Not just on the price, but on the social value and impact that they will have. So they have a turnover of, I think, about 400 million. You've got, social enterprises like Divine Chocolate, and you'll see them in supermarkets. That's a social enterprise that's been working internationally with cocoa growers in Ghana. And again, they have, empowered with the profits from that. Those Ghanaian farmers are able to buy more equipment, be self-sufficient, and they've built schools and hospitals with the money that they've received in their profits from selling the chocolate. And again, in this country. So you've got local, national, and what we also started when I was with Social Enterprise UK, I'm still with them, I'm their patron now, one of their patrons, is that we've now got the Social Enterprise World Forum, and we have been to so many countries across the world that have social enterprises. And one lovely story, because my father died when I was very young, we never did go back to Ghana, to where he was from. But I went to Ghana with the Social Enterprise World Forum and to do some work for the government there. And I was the first one in my family to go back and was able to meet some of my family members. So it was lovely to be able to go to Ghana. Very poignant and reflective in my life as an adult that I did actually go to where my father was from and meet family there. So that was poignant. But this is a big international movement now all around the country. You've got countries using social enterprise as a vehicle for change, for changing how business operates. So much so is that, some countries, although we led the way in this country, some countries now have taken it so far down the road, is that they've gone ahead of us on this social movement.
Wow. And how long were you there at the Social Enterprise UK position there, Claire?
I was just over 10 years. I was the chair. And as I say, now I've got the glorious title of being one of their patrons.
It's not glorious, Claire. No, what the contribution that you have in some unbelievable years. So again, you also took many voluntary positions in your favorite town, city, Liverpool as well. Can you share some of the roles that you took in Liverpool?
Yeah. I've always been conscious that I've been drawn away to work nationally. But I believe so much in my home city, which, I do love Liverpool for all its issues and problems. It's where I was born and raised. So I worked on the Mayoral Development Corporation, as you say, looking at the economic strategy for Liverpool. I'm chair of St. George's Hall, which is a great listed building in Liverpool. And that's something just very different, working to revive the fortunes of this beautiful building that was, it was built by the people of the city who put their coffers into it to have this amazing building put in place. So as you come out of Lime Street Station, it's like you're in Greece when you see this amazing building with its columns and very regal, and lots of things happen. So when with St. George's Hall, what we say in the city, it's the heart of the city. because when something happens, for example, Hillsborough, people go there to, because of the plateau, to be together, and then to celebrate even Liverpool winning the cup this year. That's the place where people will go. The Black Lives Matter, that was there on there. So to be the chair of that is amazing. And we're just gearing up at the moment. We've been working with the Mandela organisation, Mandela 8 organisation in Liverpool here. And we had the Nelson Mandela's daughter here with us last year, and his granddaughter. We've got some of his drawings, his prints that he did when he was in prison. And we'll be naming something after Nelson Mandela, and also later this year we will be launching our bid, because in the Great Hall there, and the history of St George's Hall is amazing, because Charles Dickens spoke. He did a lot of his. He used to go around the country reading his books, and Liverpool was a famous place. And what is fantastic about about Blackburn House, we've got the transcript of Charles Dickens at one of his talks in St George's Hall, talking about the right of girls to education, as he was a social reformist, and he talked about Blackburn House. And so we've got that, and so there was that link for me, which I loved. And now we've got the Great Hall there, which has got some fabulous statues of the great and the good men of the city of Liverpool. But we now have Kitty Wilkinson, who was an amazing woman who started wash houses because of cholera in the city. So she's in there, and we will be launching a statue of a black woman later this year, but I can't tell you who that is because we've got to officially launch it.
Definitely, Claire, definitely.
So I try and play an active role in my city, because I think I've got a bit of knowledge and skills that I can put in. So I've been helping on the city region, looking at COVID recovery at the moment, with the city council, supporting them. I sit on Alder Hay Hospital Trust, working with them. So I always like to support some of the local organisations, but obviously, now as Crown Rep, I do have a large part to play in changing how we contract, how we procure, and that we use this as a good leverage for good.
100%, 100%. You know what, dear? And you have a beautiful journey, Claire. I don't know whether you structured your career accordingly or everything fall in place for you, but it's so nice.
No, I don't structure anything. It happens. Yeah, it's very funny because if I'd have structured my life, wouldn't it have been? I think my career happened because of the barriers that were put in my way.
Claire, what is the role of Crown Rep VCSC?
So, VCSC sector, and just to give you a little background on what Crown Reps do, there's about 20 or so of us who are Crown Reps for the Cabinet Office, and it was set up to support civil servants in their procurement with main strategic suppliers, so to be that intermediary. But there's two Crown Reps that have got specific, so the other Crown Reps are work with a couple of strategic suppliers, but myself and Martin Trainer, we work with the sector. So Martin is the Crown Rep for the SME sector, and I'm the Crown Rep for the VCSE sector. Now, it's quite a large job, and there's been no one in the role for a couple of years prior to my being appointed. So my role in there has several elements. One is about driving social value through government and through our procurement processes and procedures. Secondly, it's to change behaviours, because procurement sometimes is done in a certain way with no analysis. We just do it because that's how we've always done it. So to change behaviours, not only with our commercial directors and our departments, but also with our strategic suppliers. And finally, it is about opening contract opportunities to the VCSE sector. The VCSE sector has lots to offer in terms of government procurement. They can reach communities, so they can work on a variety of contracts that will have an impact. And it's massive, because government has a responsibility for investing in contracts that make that money really work, that investment, that contract gets the very best it possibly can. And so this has been part of the government's thinking, and then wanting to change how procurement happens, and that we get more for every pound that we invest in a procurement, in a contract. So I came in at the time. There was lots going on, and however, we had the crash of Quillian, which made government start to rethink about how they contract again. And so David Lidington was the Secretary of State at the time. He wanted to know what else we could do. And so although we had the Social Value Act from 2012, it didn't have enough teeth in it. It was that you had to, you didn't, or you took it as an advisory act. You didn't have to implement it. But then with the team and myself, what we put to him is that people should report on it. And that was the step change. And now social value is one of the biggest initiatives in government to change our procurement. And we now have a framework, a social value framework. We now have 10% of all our contracts, minimum 10%, will have social value. You'll have to address the procurement process. However, for certain contracts, that should go up. For example, if you're in rehabilitation, in the MOJ, it's about people, it's about people's lives. Would you want more of a social impact from that? I would say you would. So you can see how it can work to the advantage. And so the framework, we built this framework, we went out to consultation, and unfortunately a couple of things hit us: a general election, Brexit, and a pandemic. So we went out to consultation, as I said, but it's stuck at the moment in number 10, and we'll have an announcement in the next couple of weeks for its launch. We are training 4,000 of our procurement staff on social value and how this will be integral into the contracts. With the VCSE sector now, we've done lots of work, and especially with BAME groups, women-led groups, small organisations, to ensure that they can access these contracts. And we're rolling out a programme of contract readiness. What do you need to do? We've looked at Contract Finder and all the other supportive documents and instruments we've got in government that should help people, and they also will aid this rollout. We now have agreed also that £1 in £3, just like our SMEs, will be spent. Is the aspiring target for us to for contracts to go to the VCSEs. And with our strategic suppliers, so these are your multinationals, companies, they now have to report in their annual review how many VCSEs they've contracted with, are BAME-led, how many of them are women-led, the gender pay gap, the ethnicity pay gap, prompt payment, because we know that cash flow is the thing that kills most organisations while they're waiting to be paid. We have a very strict code of conduct on prompt payment in government now. And what we're pleased about is that this has been taken up by the local authorities and combined authorities across the the UK. So in fact, for example, in Manchester, Andy Burnham, the Metro Mayor there, he's got social value at 20%, but that is to tackle homelessness. So you can see how it can be used. I have a VCSE expert panel that work alongside me. So Peter Holbrook, SEUK, Carl Wilding from NCVO. We have a number of people working and supporting me in this work. And I'm pleased, touchwood, to say that it's going well. It's from the two departments that are driving this, which is OCS and Cabinet Office. Those two departments are driving this through. And so we will obviously be capturing what happens, and we'll be able to report on the success. But the announcement by number 10 will be hopefully quite soon, and that will be the starting block to start. So we already have some dynamic purchasing frameworks that we've put together. So we've got contracts for VCSEs to access in MOJ, Ministry of Justice, in DWP, and also in our digital over in DCMS and digital inclusiveness. So you can see it's starting to get traction. So I'm pleased at where we're up to.
Wow, Claire, how long have you been in this role now, Claire?
2 years.
Wow, that's a lot that's been happening in these 2 years, Claire. I mean, kudos to you and the team. And that's a great news that we will be adding VCSE, £1 out of every £3 goes to VCSE, and the Social Value Act implementation on central government is going to go live in the next couple of weeks or so. Great achievements there, Claire. So part of this role, Claire, how do you kind of relate or work alongside other public bodies and also inside Cabinet Office, Claire?
Yeah, so in the job just 2 years. So a lot has happened. I have a number of tables that with the BAME sector, women-led organisations that I'll be doing both for youth and also for disability. So we also look, because one of my key things is that we have a diverse supplier list in government, that it really does reach our communities. And if this is part of the government's levelling up agenda, I think that this will work. It will make the sector more sustainable. And at this time, post-COVID, when a lot of organisations have really suffered with the, not being able to work and get income in, this really, I hope, will be a measure that will support organisations back to their full strength and doing the work that we vitally need, because they are the social glue between government and communities up and down the country.
100%, Claire. So how long is this role remaining, Claire, and what would you like to achieve before you exit of this role?
Yeah, it's for, I think, 4 or 5 years. We'll see after that. But I've still got lots to do, because the proof is in the pudding. Is that we now have got all the foundations in place. It's been, a while to try and get this. Now the next step is how does the sector sign up and get these contracts? So that is the most important part of this. And so we, the next from now on is getting the sector ready. There's contracts there to be taken up. There will be more opportunities for the sector to grow, to create, to support their communities. And we've just got to make sure that we can give them that necessary support to run this contract. The other thing that we've got in place is there are many small organisations that don't have the infrastructure to go for bids by themselves. They just don't have the people. They're very much, at the coalface of what they do. So we put with our lawyers a consortium model together. We know that some consortiums have worked against the sector and they've been used for, as fodder really. They've been the sweetener when large organisations appeal to gain contracts, but they really haven't gained as a result of having them. One will be about smaller organisations coming together and to go for contracts. And so, we'll enable them to form a really good, solid consortia. But it'll also be for some very large social enterprises and charities to also form a consortia to go for the very, very large contracts that government put out, those big multi-million contracts that go out. So there is that opportunity there also.
As you rightly said, COVID has put the spanner in the works, but at the same time, COVID has also, showed us some positive things that society has pulled together themselves to sustain. In your own opinion, Claire, did you see any inspiring stories, any inspiring actions?
Oh my goodness! I think the VCSE sector has absolutely pulled together on this. For all those thousands of people who signed up at a call from government to go and help shop and look after people who were shielded was phenomenal. The call was put out, I think, at one of the briefings that evening. I think they asked for over 200,000 volunteers, and they went way over. And so that is the spirit that there is in this country, that people want to help their neighbour, they want to help in their communities. And the inspiring of our NHS, I mean, you couldn't fail to be moved by, the staff who were working in the most horrendous conditions, the most horrendous things happen. And we will never know, really, what it was like to go into those COVID wards and people. I mean, the PM will know, because he was obviously one of those people that was in intensive care. And I think it's been transformational what they did in the NHS. And so people coming out on that Thursday night to just clap, to show that solidarity, it brought communities together, like nothing has for a long time. And it's revolutionized how we will work, how we will deal with things in the future. But as you say, there's been lots of downs on COVID, and the people that we've lost on the way, the disproportionate effect it had on BAME communities, and throughout this, Black Lives Matter came to the fore also. And again, people wanting justice. We're looking for justice for people. It's been an extraordinary time. But there were so many organisations opening out, those organisations delivering food, making sure that, people had the supplies they need. People talk about the war effort and people doing things. It was like a silent war. And so everybody geared up to do whatever they could to support people, during this time of, national tragedy of a pandemic.
100%, Claire. But how are you coping in this COVID environment, Claire? You've been a person who inspires everybody. You're always with the community, but now we all are locked down, working from home, doing our best to, give back to the society. How are you coping?
Well, I don't live in London. I live in Liverpool. I used to travel every week to London to do my work in government. So I've seen much more of my house over this period, which has been nice. But how have I coped? I think we've all had to adapt. I was shielded because of underlying health conditions that I have. And so that was interesting. And just not, every week just, passed and passed. But we've put so many things in place now. And I think, it's great to have adapted. With 21 lock and, furlough comes to an end. And I mean, my worry is furlough coming to an end and trying to get a grasp on the state of the VCSE sector has been something I've been doing over the last couple of months, just to see what else that we can do to support our sector within government. But yeah, so for me, it's been, a lot of time with my family. I didn't see my daughter or my grandchildren for 6 months. I saw them a couple of weeks ago, which was wonderful. But just like everybody else, just having to adapt and to make sure that, you're able to do the best thing you can. I think the saddest thing for me is that I retired from my role after 37 years with Blackburn House. And so to have a Zoom leaving do wasn't what I anticipated. But, that's how it will be until we get to a point where we can, meet and celebrate and get together again. So that was a bit sad for me, not to be, with all the people I've worked with many, many years. So anyway, that will hopefully happen in the future. But, it's a time of reflection on life. And I think everybody's had to do that, to say, these things happen in life. But also it brought the best behaviours you could ever see to the fore also.
Claire, we know you as a leading light in women empowerment, in VCSC sector, in BAME, and many more, Claire. What are the 3 things not many people know about you?
Oh, gosh. I suppose I talked about my early life, which some people will not know. Sometimes people think because you're advanced in your career, it's been, that sort of, it happened. But it was a struggle. My life was a struggle to try and, help and support my family and my mother at a time of need, financial need for the family. And I never thought that I would get to where I am. I suppose maybe the trivial things in my life is I love to flower arrange, which is my big passion. I always said when I retire, get a flower shop and do flowers. I don't think it's going to happen now that I'm here at this point, but it was always something that I thought, I would like to do. So what other things? I can't think of anything. People think about giving back and doing things, and I think the most rewarding things I do at the moment is to coach some other, younger women, Black women who want to aspire. And that for me is so rewarding as a person to support and to help in that way, to see the next generation of women leaders come into the fore, because, we really do need to ensure equality. I always thought I'd leave my job at Blackburn House. At the end of it, we would have made demonstrable difference. Now we have, but there's still so much to do in wider society to stop some of the inequalities that actually happen. It's just doing those things and those quiet things in terms of, being able to, do my flowers and do things that are good for me. I love boxing and doing other things. So a bit of a, not a health nut, but I really enjoy working out and doing things. And my vice is a nice glass of fine wine now and again.
So, what trait do you like the most about yourself?
I think I'm very ambitious, but not ambitious for me. I'm ambitious for others and for the cause that because I mentioned at the beginning that it was a sliding moment in my life. And with either that, I went back and home and forgot about it, or I fought the barriers that were being put in my way. And I suppose that, I had that ambition. I had that ambition during Blackburn House for all of our women to succeed. And I have an ambition for the VCSE sector to show just what it can do. It's the most marvellous thing in this country and around the world when communities come together to look at what needs doing and to seeing that challenge and supporting others. And to me, that's what my life career became in the end. You asked me, did I plan my career at the beginning? I didn't plan anything. It happened. But I'm glad it happened in this way because it's brought so much richness to my life, sometimes disappointment, but I usually try and get over the disappointments and get back positive. So for me, it is, ambition and drive to ensure that we have an equal society and that we can do some of the great things that can support all of us in whatever we do.
Claire, so let's enter the rapid fire question round.
Okay.
So, what do you cook better than anyone?
Oh, I love cooking. And so what do I cook the best? My boys love my lasagna the best.
Nice.
And then one of my other boys likes these meat pies that I make for him.
Got you. So if we could ask...
I'm also good on Italian. Love Italian food.
That, Claire. I don't know when I'm in Liverpool, but next time I'm there, I'm coming to your place. Claire, if I ask your children for a reference about mom, what do you think they will tell about you?
Oh, I think they'd say that I'm strict. But I'm fair, and I think that they are proud in their own way. But especially my daughter, who puts the most lovely things up about me on her Instagram, and it's lovely for my grandchildren. Who one of my grandchildren, she said, I went on Google, Grandma, and I found you on it. So I think they are proud in what I've been able to achieve.
Beautiful. So you mentioned you are great in cooking Italian, but if you could eat only 3 foods for the rest of your life, what would they be?
A good Italian dish,
right?
Fish, which I absolutely love, and lots of vegetables.
It's a nice balanced diet there, Claire. It's amazing. Nice.
Yeah. I won't mention the cake or the wine.
It's there for granted, definitely. So, what was the best year of your life and why?
Oh gosh. Oh, the best year of my life. There's been so many great years. Let me think. And I should have quickly come out and said my wedding day, shouldn't I? It was beautiful. It was a beautiful day, and it does stand out in my mind. I think one of the best days was, I failed the 11 plus. I always felt inadequate because I didn't have qualifications. I didn't have GCSEs or anything. And I went back to university as a mature student for 5 years, and I got my degree. And I think the proudest moment was to walk across the stage and get my degree as an adult student, and that I did very well with the degree I got, and that it was something I never thought I'd achieve. I didn't think I academically could have done it. I did.
Oh, that's powerful, Claire. Amazing. If you could be anywhere else right now, assume there is no COVID, where would you go?
Oh, Tuscany. Yes, in the middle of Tuscany, which I will be in 10 days' time.
Really?
Yes. I'm going to Tuscany with my husband. Yeah.
Aww. We wish you a happy
My most favourite place. We went there for our honeymoon, and we've gone there every year since.
Oh, wow.
So
That's so
it's like going home. It's like going home. It's lovely.
romantic, Claire. I hope my wife doesn't listen to this particular. That's nice. So, when you're having a bad day, what do you do to make yourself feel better?
Oh, when you're having a bad day, sometimes it's just having a little workout or a walk, walking, going out and just walking around the block. I'm very lucky. I'm at the end of my road is the River Mersey, so it's always a lovely, place to see, things happening on the River Mersey. But just going for a walk and clearing your head and trying to make sense of things. But also sometimes at night, you get very stressed from the day's work. And my other thing I love to do is to listen to BBC Sounds and download the play and really get lost in that with my headphones.
Wow, that's a lot going on there, considering you have a very busy life. Amazing. So, which history character would you like to meet and why?
I suppose for me, it's still quite contemporary. And I'd love to spend an hour with Nelson Mandela to talk things through. I've been to Cape Town. I've been to Robben Island where he was incarcerated. And for a man to come out of that with reconciliation and a heart that was willing to forgive, not to forget, but to forgive what happened, to me, it's quite amazing.
Yes, so true. So, what's on your bucket list?
What's on my bucket list? Well, my husband and I, when I retire this year, we're going to go and see some new places. My husband's always wanted to go to India. I've been once myself. We wanted to do that. So there's a few things I'd like to go, some places to travel and to see and to enjoy. And what else is on my bucket list? I suppose is the job I'm doing at the moment, I feel is one of the most important things that I will be able to give back to the sector that I've belonged to for the majority of my working life. And so if I can really make things happen and bring some sustainability to organisations up and down the country that are doing this incredible work that has a massive ripple effect on the communities, that for me is something I really want to achieve. So yeah, it's my bucket list is about traveling and just finishing off my working life in a way that I can sit back and reflect and say, I did okay.
Wow, amazing, Claire. So you have done so many stuff here, Claire. If you look back and see, this is the most courageous thing that I've ever done in my life, what would it be?
Oh, the most courageous, the thing that I did, and I have to say, is that I was backed by some courageous women. And that was when I wanted to get Blackburn House. And what that took me away from is that, we were in another building where we just paid our rent. And it was a bit like being at home. When you're at home, when you're young and you get your first job and you give your mum or your father your housekeeping and then the rest of the money is yours. You don't have to think about the lights, the bills or anything, So moving into Blackburn House was going to bring with it great responsibility. And I think, and going into that, I had, we got contracts, but, we had to spend every penny we got on our students. And I'd earned £500 in speaking engagements that I had in a building society account for women's tech. And that's all I started with. And so, and then I was able to get, people to agree to do things, some women architects to do some initial drawings for us with our, for our pitch. And I suppose that I had the determination with that little bit of money to go in and then raise £4 million to have this incredible building and this organisation for the women of Merseyside. And lots of people from around the world, we've had women from China, from Europe, come to see our building and to come and see what we did, because it was one on its own, in the development of women's rights in Liverpool. And so it's been a beacon, in the country for what we've been able to achieve. And I suppose that for me was a big challenge, because I had to take on a building, but I had to make all those businesses work too. So it did keep me awake at night, and I used to sit outside the building now and again thinking, oh, I think I've gone too far this time. So that will always stick out as monumental in what I was able to do, and to sell to my board and to my teams to say, come with me, we're taking a big risk, but come with me because it will work. And before I left, I looked at the 2-page document I put into the City Council in the early 90s for the building. And what is clear and crisp mission of what we said we were going to do still holds true today, as it did over 20 years ago when we moved into that building.
Looking back, Claire, there are, you have been an inspiration to so many people, including me, but who are the people who have been the most influential in your life and career?
Okay, so the first person that was influential, I've talked about my father, and he was, to give me what he did as and dying when I was just 12 years old. I thought it was tough what we had to do as children, but I understand now that was for a reason. But the second person was Angela Davis in the United States. Discrimination was rife and things were happening, and it was very difficult. And it was because my father wasn't there. I couldn't talk through some of the racial issues with him. My mum tried to understand, but she couldn't quite, get what was happening. And Angela Davis came onto the scene in the US, and she spoke in a language that I understood, the politics that came out of her mouth, and the inspirational books that she wrote. And when she was arrested and again put in jail, she was at one point one of the most wanted Black women in the States. And now she's this, iconic woman, in the States. So she has been inspirational to me. I think the other person that's been inspirational is Barack Obama. The charisma and the to see a Black man, because I lived in the States for a number of years, and I knew the segregation and the deprivation. And it's not that it solves all the ills in the States. Things are very, very bad. But the fact that they had a Black US president was absolutely amazing. And then on the other side is the great poet and woman Maya Angelou. If you read some of her poetry, some of the things she wrote about, and now I rise, talking about rising through all the issues and the oppressions that there are. It's absolutely magical. And the last person is, and her name's gone out of my head. Oh, that's awful. She's gone off my head. She was in charge of the IMF. So it's Christine Lagarde, who was she was the president of the IMF. And if you read some of her books on rights and women's rights, absolutely amazing woman.
what advice would you give a BAME aspirant or a women aspirants who want to pursue a successful career similar to yours?
Oh, I think you have to be tenacious. You need to get someone that is a good coach, someone that you can, even for me now, sometimes, I have some friends ring and just say, well, this is what I'm thinking. What's your thoughts? Do you think it's the right path? And having those people there to support you, not to say no. And when you get your foot in the door, don't let it shut behind you. Keep that door open for other people to come through. What you get, how you support others, you will reap the rewards of bringing people alongside you and with you on that journey. But you do have to be tenacious and know what you need to know. What I did when I was very young and when I first had to get some, trying to get jobs and trying to do things, and some of the work I did in the States, I always learned other people's jobs. I always looked around to see. I was very curious about what other people did, and not that I was trying to take the job off them, but it was just to add to my knowledge base on what I can do. I could do. So it is. I mean, people talk about networking, and it's great. I'm not a great networker, but I do have a lot of people that I do network with. Doesn't make quite sense, but I'm not looking over my shoulder for the next, looking over people's shoulder for the next person I should speak to, and just having that tight group of people around you, that support and keep you grounded.
Perfect, Claire. Claire, 40 plus years of social conscious career that you had. If you're writing a book about yourself, Claire, what title would you give the book?
Oh gosh, I don't know. Maybe The Adventures of Claire Does. I'm not too sure. I think I would have to leave that up to somebody more qualified. Maybe my husband who writes books could do it.
Brilliant. And if we make Adventures of Claire Dow as a Hollywood movie, which actress would you think should act as your role?
Oh my goodness, that's a big one. Oh, I don't know. I think in her day, Oprah Winfrey, I think the roles that she took on, she wasn't that, what they see as a Hollywood beauty, but she's a very beautiful woman in and out. And the roles she did in The Color Purple and other roles, she was really feisty. And I would like somebody who's got some fire in their belly. Because for me, what has always driven me is, having that fire in my belly and wanting to challenge inequalities and wanting to, make life better for the many.
That's brilliant, Claire. With that note, Claire, we end this conversation. So thank you so much, Claire, for your time today. It's been an absolute privilege and honor to have you with me at Baachu Talk. Wish you all the good health and happiness. Please continue to inspire BAME aspirants, women aspirants, VCSE aspirants, every single person you touch, as you always do. Please do stay kind, stay healthy, and continue inspiring, Claire. Thank you so much.
And thank you for inviting me to the interview. I've really enjoyed it.
To our listeners, thank you for tuning in. Please do visit baachu.com/Baachu Talk podcast to this specific episode link to everything that was mentioned in this episode. Don't forget to subscribe, review, and share Baachu Talk podcast with your loved ones. We will see you at the next episode with another special guest. Until then, it's Bhaskar Sundram from Baachu signing off.